Hello, this is Hendrix Toda, and I'm going to be sharing with you today my Position 1 tier list for patch 7.34D. Keep in mind this tier list is subjective, so it's just my opinions. You may have a different opinion about this stuff. So let's get right into it. I'll start the category of characters that are in Position 1 currently, that they may have been in the past, or they're unviable. The first one I have is Magnus. Since the universal change in 7.33, which kind of showed Magnus as a pos one, or he would build things like, Echo Saber and Scotty. He's kind of been, they've nerfed his overpower to the extent that he's not really played as a position one anymore, and he's not very good. However, I think Magnus as a character is decent. I think as an offlaner he's okay. He's just not really a great position one at the moment, in my opinion. So that's why I would put him in not belonging. Riki, I think, to be candid, the Pos 1 sort of meta is a lot about power farming and scaling really well into the late game. And Riki as a character kind of wants to use his stealth to open up the map and find picks on people, get vision on people, playstyle very similar to like Bounty Hunter. So he doesn't really suit the Pos 1 playstyle in my opinion at the moment. I think he's still, if you're really good, you could probably pull it off. But I don't really think it's his main benefit at the moment. Those are the only two characters I think that, at least for the purposes of this list, that you might think of as a pos one that I'm going to put there. Obviously, I could put all the other heroes in the game in there, but those are the ones that I'm going to focus on. Now for D tier characters that I think you can, play them occasionally, but they're not very good. First one I have is Huskar. Huskar has recently received a buff to his Burning Spear, so Huskar mid lane right now is really powerful. But Huskar is a position 1, not so good. He doesn't really farm as fast as a lot of the pos 1s that you'd like, and he's going to be weaker later on in the game to things like Pipe and things like Black King Bar. He doesn't really fit it very well also, just in my opinion. Having your pos 1 run in and do half his health for his ultimate, if that's your main damage dealer, that kind of feels bad. So Huskar is a very good character right now in mid or off lane, just not position 1 in my opinion. But I think you could still play it. He has enough attack speed to, make it work occasionally if you wanted to. Next up is Pudge. I'm not really a fan of Pudge in general as a character. I think he's very skill-based and he's very inconsistent. And this is, I think, no more true than in position 1 at the moment, where if you're, a Pudge guy and you can hit every hook, yeah, sure, he's playable, but if you're not really super good at hitting hooks on people and finding picks, you're never going to get the strength stacks, and you're never really going to be a super relevant source of damage. Combine that with the fact that they've nerfed his Aghanim Shard for his Rot, and I don't really think he's very good as position 1 right now. Next one is Medusa. I think the main problem with Medusa is Medusa scales very slowly and she doesn't really do great damage. Yes, she does farm somewhat quickly, but she kind of is AFK for the majority of the match. And when she does come online, her damage isn't even that good compared to other position 1s. She also doesn't get her talent that actually enables her to do damage until level 25, that being the split shot used as modifiers. So she's just kind of weak in my opinion. I mean, you could play it, but there's just a lot of things that are better. Next we have Sniper. Sniper is just kind of, I think, a mid character at the moment. He's gotten some buff. I know his Assassinate now does attack damage to the target. He can reset it and stuff. But currently, there's a lot of mobility. Things are going to jump on you, run at you real fast. Sniper doesn't really have a lot of great self-peel. He doesn't really do very considerable damage. He's not really able to deal with something like a enemy Bloodseeker running at him with Black King Bar active. His knockback isn't going to be as effective. So it's not really a great meta for Sniper at the moment. I think if you're going to play Sniper, you could play him mid lane. That's maybe slightly better. But I think the character's fairly weak at this point in time. I think playing out that there's just better options than Spectre. I think Spectre just is atrocious in lane phase and doesn't even really scale that well. I think Spectre's just honestly kind of garbage, if I'm being real. I don't think there's any reason to play Spectre. This character is just junk, in my opinion. Abaddon has received a lot of buffs as of recent, and he's sort of playable as a position 1. The problem, I just kind of personally think that his W and Q are both just terrible abilities. His W, like, doesn't feel like it really shields you for very much, and it's not even that much damage, and his Q, like, hurts you and costs mana to then, like, just do, like, a little bit of damage to an enemy. I mean, his E is, like, a good ability, and his ultimate's strong, but Abaddon just, like, it feels like you can just ignore him, and it's not, like, there's not, like, a reason to focus him. You know, what I will say about Abaddon is he does take towers really effectively, especially with, like, Manta style, you know, Radiance and, like, using his W. This character can, like, annihilate turrets. So that is, like, one thing he does, but that's also kind of like a later timing, so you had this character that's just, like, garbage for most of the game, and two, like, when he goes to, like, the Radiance build, like, you have a character that has a giant power trough from the time that he gets the 1300 gold evasion item until the time he gets Sacred Relic. He's really weak in between that timing. Virtually, it's just a 4 versus 5. It's, like, really impossible to play. So, and even, again, I don't even think he's, like, the best late game. So, I think he's just fairly mediocre as a character, even with the buffs recently. Mercy's a solid character right now. I think they just changed her sidekick to where it now, like, always applies on her. So, she does kind of get the benefit of always getting some of those stats, but I kind of think Marcy's better as a support. I think that as a position 1, she doesn't farm super quickly, and she has a very limited duration of damage, because it's basically just when her ultimate's up. When her ultimate's down, she doesn't really do very much damage, so she's, I don't think, particularly powerful as a position 1 at the moment. Now going into C tier. The first one's Alchemist. Alchemist is very mediocre right now, I think. If you're very good at Alchemist and you can hit the timings that you need and farm really fast, then Alchemist is always going to be playable. But the map's big enough to where, like, every character can get a lot of farm. So it's like, Alchemist doesn't even feel like he gets that far ahead at the moment, and, you know, that's pretty bad. So, very kind of mediocre in my opinion. I'm not a fan of him right now. Anti-Mage, there's, you can't pick this character first. You have to kind of wait to see what the enemy picks. If there's multiple spell casting threats with high amount on the enemy team, then you can pick Anti-Mage if they pick a Medusa. But obviously with Medusa being D tier, Anti-Mage is not going to be that good either. He's always going to have bad matchups into a lot of the other Pos 1s, because the other Pos 1s are high physical damage, which he sucks against, especially like Phantom Assassin. So there's way more consistent picks than this character. You can pull off Monkey King as a position 1, but it's definitely weaker than it used to be. He doesn't. He does good damage with his ultimate and his Q, but it's more of the style that Monkey King wants to play. Is he wants to run around and kind of gank these side lanes. You don't just want him like power farming. You want to take advantage of like mischief, also to like get into like a sneaky position and kind of surprise enemies. So he's not a bad position 1, but it just doesn't suit his playstyle. I think Monkey King in general is like decent at the moment. I just think his ultimate's like really strong, but he's not great as like your main power farming carry right now. So I'm gonna kind of rate him low, but you could still do it if you wanted to. Morphling, the only reason I play Morphling in C tier is I think his new, I believe it's the Scepter. Let me see. Yeah, I think his new Scepter is really strong because he creates an illusion of an enemy hero that can also like cast abilities. So theoretically, that can be, you could just cast this on like, the enemy position 1 if you wanted to, and you could just have 2 of them, or you could cast it on the enemy support if they have some kind of debuff or buff spell. Like if they had an Oracle, you could ult him, and then you could give those buffs to yourself or give them to your team. Like, Morphling, there's a lot of possibilities with the Scepter. That being said, I think Morphling himself is garbage. His adaptive strike, even with E-Blade, and max agility does not seem, it feels like it does no damage at all. And, he does have a decent lane phase because he can obviously, like, strength attribute shift, but he doesn't really do any damage whatsoever. His timing is super late as well, and I think he gets like outscaled, but I'll put him in C tier because I do think you can do some interesting things with the Scepter if you're good at him. Meepo. I put Meepo in C tier just because I'm not sure. I think this character is very strong, actually. Every time I face this character, it's feels just, depending on like what I'm playing, it feels so hard to deal with him. He, has all of his illusions. They're all really tanky. He steals all your health. You can't get away from him. He does a bunch of pure damage. I think that people, obviously this is a very difficult character to play, so I think that he's just not really well represented in the pool. But I think theoretically somebody was to come around and play Meepo at a really high level, in the pro scene, you would see how good this character is. I'm convinced this character is strong. I'm only going to put him C tier though because, I guess I haven't seen it consistently enough. I just personally, when I fight him, I feel like he's really good, to be honest. Weaver just received, I believe, 2 buffs, I think, to his Shikuchi and his Geminate attack. I think both of them, what they did is they increased the base damage on both, if I'm not mistaken. So Weaver's definitely stronger now. I think in general, though, Weaver, very similar to Bounty Hunter Ariki, kind of has a bit of an active playstyle where he wants to run around. He wants to, run through you with Shikuchi and blow you up and then get out with his ultimate. And that playstyle kind of lends itself more to a support or potentially like a mid laner. So I think he's playable as Pos 1, but I don't think it really suits the strengths of the character. Because he's obviously not like a super farmer or anything like that. But, you can play it if you want to. Arkhorn's been getting a couple of buffs the past couple patches now. The one that they recently did is they made his Spark Wraith do increased damage to non-hero units, which will help his character's farming. If Arkhorn is allowed to get to his late game, he's quite a menace, of course. I personally hate to see this character come back. I think he's really annoying. I'm going to put him just in C tier more because I'm not certain. Arkhorn obviously has a very small player pool. Not a lot of people really know how to use this character, so I think it's, reflective of that is why I'm putting him in C tier. But I don't know. He could come around and then be really strong, so we'll have to see. Very similar to Arkhorn, I put Lone Druid. I'm personally convinced that, with Lone Druid, the appropriate playstyle is something like Midas, and you just kind of focus on trying to get, 12 items filled up in the game, and that's the best thing to do. I see people doing this variation where they like put Diffusal or some weird things on the bear and they don't put any items on the druid itself, and I've never been impressed with that playstyle. It just seems like the druid just gets like one shot. So I think very similar to Arkhorn, people just haven't figured out how to play the character. I think the character is innately quite strong because you're playing as 2 heroes basically. He's very strong into magic threats like Puck because of the magic resistance. And he also has a bunch of armor too. So, he's definitely a powerful character. I just think it's a matter of the build and the role and the playstyle. Like, no one can really decide is this guy position 1, is he mid, is he off lane? And I kind of have him, in my mind, the same rank in all 3, at around C tier, because I think that until somebody figures out really what role he should be in, that's just where I'm going to put him. I mean, he's definitely powerful, I think, though, if he's played right. It's just, kind of difficult. Next is B tier. First one is Sven. Sven received a pretty huge nerf on his ultimate. I believe they nerfed about like 20%. So Sven is definitely, that's the damage. Sven is definitely, I think, weaker than he was last patch. That's why I bumped him down from, I would have said last patch that he was probably the 2nd or 3rd best position 1 behind like Venom Assassin and Gyro, but Sven now is just like average. Like, he's good. He has the same problems as before, the same benefits. He farms quickly and he picks up really fast in the mid game. He can blink on supports and like blow them up and give his team armor. He's going to be weaker when he's faced off against like a really fed Agi carry. He's just not going to do as much damage as them. That being said, even then, like, Sven has the shard where his Warcry armor is undispellable, so I could even be incorrect about that. He could be better than I think later. But yeah, I think at least high B tier is appropriate for this character at the moment. He's very good if he's played right. Muerta's a very good hero right now in professional play because you can kind of slot on Muerta somewhat early in the draft, and then Muerta can either go position 1 or she can go support. As a position 1, she's especially good against some of the melee carries that need to all-in, like Ursa or Troll Warlord or Juggernaut, because she simply ults and you can't kill her during that time, and then, that gives her kind of an advantage. And she also like scales pretty well because she does get, I think, bonus gunslinger chance at level 20, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so she becomes like a really big DPS threat later in the game. She's not fantastic because as an intelligence character, like her damage isn't the greatest. So you need to have some other damage in your team, or you need it to be like a good Muerta game. But when it's a good Muerta game, it's almost impossible for the enemies to beat you on account of the ultimate. So she's solid. Lifestealer, similar to some of the characters I've referenced, has had quite a few buffs in a row. They recently buffed up his W at max rank. Now it does 1.9% of their max health, I believe. Yeah, Lifestealer has a very good build. I guess it's kind of the traditional build where you do Armlet into Maelstrom, and that gives you really good farming speed. You can jungle basically as soon as you get Armlet on Lifestealer. You, with that build, farm at an adequate speed, and you come online fairly fast, as opposed to some of the other positional ones, because you obviously don't need Black King Bar on this character or any like damage items. You just have like Maelstrom, Armlet, Face Boots, you run at people, you do a bunch of damage. If you lose the fight, you ult, run away, go back to farming. You can also, of course, gank people with the ultimate. So Lifestealer is I think he's, not great, but he's decent right now. I think B tier is appropriate. His shard is still, of course, very good if they're not able to dispel it. The main problem is that it can be dispelled, and his E can also be affected by Break. So Lifestealer is fairly easy to shut down with the appropriate items, but he is fairly consistent. He's good into teams that have a lot of magic threat because of his Q, of course. And if they have something mid, like a very high damage mid laner that's magic, like a Lina or a Zeus, he's quite good. And he's also quite good as the enemy team is very tanky because of his percentage health damage. So he's a versatile character that's not excellent in any one way, but I think he's definitely playable now after they have repeatedly buffed his feast. I think Razor's also an excellent hero at the moment. I think he's a little bit better at offlane, because the character doesn't farm exceptionally fast and he wants to kind of do like a tank build. But as position 1, you can play him if they have like a melee carry, kind of similar to Muerta. His W is a really strong ability that guts a lot of these pure melee, kind of all-in carries. Razor can really dominate them for basically the entire game because his W pierces spell immunity and it's not dispellable, so there's not really any answer to it besides illusions. So Razor is overall a good character and a very reliable offlaner. His only weakness is he doesn't really build all items too effectively. But he kind of makes up for that by the utility you get from him draining all of the carries damage and the AoE magic damage he provides. Is pretty valuable. So I think this character is good. Juggernaut is very just generally solid. The character has a lot of the same innate strengths he's always had. He has the, some of the kill pressure early game with his Q if you pair him with the right laner. He has a sustain. He has good DPS. The ultimate, if you clear the wave, you can set up for a dive. If it's just one enemy area and it's two, the ultimate's very powerful basically the entire game. Juggernaut just has the same traditional problems where he gets countered very hard by like Ethereal Blade, very hard by stuff like Wind Run. So you just kind of have to, I think if you're Juggernaut, you just have to farm very quickly in the game with Battle Fury and kind of have the game go at a quick pace for him to be good, because I think he will eventually, his coordinated opponents can like pretty easily outplay his Blade Fury in my opinion, and when his Blade Fury is down, he's not really able to like finish off kills necessarily. He does have the Scepter, which gives him like an additional Omni Slash, so you can kind of sometimes bait people into using like an E-Blade in that time. So that's why I think I'd put him like B instead of C tier. But yeah, Juggernaut's just like, he's very average in my opinion. I think if you're good at Juggernaut and you farm a lot, and you show up to the fights after everyone's used their abilities, you ult the enemy team, everybody dies, it's great. But if the enemies are really committed to shutting you down, they can do it. So I'm going to put him kind of in the B tier. Luna received a buff to her shard, I believe. Let me see. Yes. Yeah, she received a buff to her shard. So now she's going to be a little bit tankier. So I think this kind of puts Luna on the cusp of being Viable. Yeah, that's right. She also received a buff to Harmonglave's damage bounce, so she's going to farm a little bit faster. She's going to be a little bit tankier with her shard. And Luna still has the same traditional strengths, where she has a very early power spike with her Q1 ultimate. I'm kind of of the persuasion that I think if you play Luna, you can do something like, Mask of Madness and Scepter early, which kind of gives you a mix of farming speed, and then you have the much more powerful ultimate, which really accentuates your level 6 spike on this character. Like, I think this character is actually playable mid at the moment because the ultimate with Scepter is so powerful. And you also, of course, synergize well with characters that want to be strong at nighttime, like Night Stalker, or Lycan with your E. So I think Luna definitely has a place in the meta as a more fast-paced position one who also late game can be somewhat tanky with the shard. It depends on your coordination with your team if you're able to essentially take advantage of her power spikes. But I think that if you do, that she's very powerful at the moment. I'm going to kind of group Naga Siren and Phantom Lancer kind of in the same category here. They're both decent illusion heroes, very middle of the pack. Same kind of strength they've always had. They farm exceptionally fast, and then they're both very good late game heroes. But they have kind of a weak laning phase, especially Phantom Lancer. Actually, Phantom Lancer's really bad in the lane phase. And both these guys have been nerfed several times, kind of leading up to this patch. So, one thing that these two do, because they have so many illusions, is that they fare well into a lot of the single target disablers at the moment, like your Dooms or your Banes, because it's hard for them to sufficiently pick the target that they want to ult and disable, and those characters are really OP because their disable pierces Black King Bar. So these characters, because they don't really go for Black King Bar very often, and because they have so many illusions, they're particularly strong into those type of heroes. Neither of these characters, though, really do incredible damage, and they don't, they obviously take a while to pick up, so I kind of grouped them together here. They're obviously different, but they have, to me, I think, a very similar playstyle. The only difference is Naga Siren has a little bit more team play with her ultimate. She can also escape, but Phantom Lancer can also escape too with his invisibility, so I kind of had these characters as ditto in a sense. Wraith King has been buffed so many times, it's kind of crazy. I mean, I counted the other day, it was like 5 times in a row he's gotten like big buffs or something. Basically at the moment, the newest one is that Wraith King Skeletons do a bunch more damage to heroes. It's 25%. I think Wraith King is one of the best offlaners in the game right now, and he's quite good at his position 1 as well. Just not amazing. It just depends on if you're, countering the offlane by something. Then I think as a position 1 he can be playable still, because you do of course have the mortal strength and the lifesteal, but your late game as Wraith King is kind of not particularly good, because you don't have your skeletons just get one shot, and you don't have high armor. So I think Wraith King is kind of a character that wants to push his advantage in the game and get a lot of stuff done with his stun and with his revive. So he's not the best position 1, but if you can get the ball rolling, he's solid. So that's why I put him in B tier. Next we have Troll Warlord. Troll Warlord is a +1. He's susceptible to a lot of counters, as we mentioned, where to Razor, Necrophos, any of these characters that can basically avoid attacks, even Monkey King with Mischief. These characters all counter Troll Warlord. He also isn't even generally very good at ranged characters. But Troll Warlord does do a couple things incredibly well. He's very good at taking turrets. Him and Abaddon are like the best turret takers in the game. I think even Troll Warlord's better. And Troll Warlord can I have the feeling that you can get to a point as Troll where you're kind of like a raid boss, where you get your whirling axes that pierce spell immunity. So you're able to get the enemies that basically uncancelable 60% miss chance, which is really strong. Your Q gives you up to, I believe, 17 armor, if I'm not mistaken, with the talent. Yeah, and that's an exceptional amount of armor. You obviously do a lot of damage. His new shard, which no one's talking about, is really powerful because it gives you a chance essentially to launch an extra attack at somebody else, which is perfect for your ultimate. It's one of the big problems with Troll is you ult in, and then they send a tank who just kind of, they send like a Mars or a Bristleback to stand in front of you, and you don't really do anything. But now, but if you have those enemies around, you will be able to at least hit them with extra attacks. His scepter also enables him to dispel enemies, and dispel buffs on himself. So if there's something like a Necrophos, with his Ghost Shroud, you can dispel that, or any sort of number of powerful buffs you can remove with Whirling Axes. So I think if Troll Warlord is played correctly, he's quite difficult to deal with. And of course, his snare-piercing spell immunity is another really strong thing about him that makes it difficult to deal with. I think, to me, when I watch people, one of the things that I think they do wrong with when playing this character is they build Sanjin Yasha before they build like Satanic. I think that's the biggest mistake I see. I think Satanic after Black Kingbar and Battle Fury is the way to go because it provides you an extra dispel and lifesteal when your ultimate's down. So I think maybe that's the reason why people don't do so well in this character, but he's very powerful when he's slotted in the correct game, in my opinion. Ursa is quite similar to Troll Warlord. He's very powerful against melee heroes. He takes towers with decent speed with his W. He's hard to shut down and like blow up because of his ultimate. So this character is just decent. The problem is that you can get rid of the kind of classic thing against Ursa, so you can just put an old fire on him to essentially get rid of his W and kind of remove any buffs he puts on himself. So that is an issue, and he's also, of course, really hurt by things like Force Staff, things that can kind of create space between him and the enemies. But Ursa has a lot of kill pressure early game. He farms quite fast, especially if you're dragging creep waves into the jungle, and Ursa can just get his W off and he can just one-shot the jungle monsters. And he has a lot of kill pressure in lane, especially if he gets like an extra point in his W or something. You throw a blood grenade on the enemy. Ursa, W's them and auto-attacks him like 5 times. I mean, he's just, he's stronger, I think, than people realize. He's just kind of one of these characters that disappeared sort of randomly. He was popular around 7.32, I think, and then he kind of just fell off for whatever reason. I'm not entirely sure. So I think Ursa is a very generally strong character right now. His ultimate also has a very low cooldown. There's even a build that people doing where they do like Octarine to try to get the ultimate as much as possible, which I don't know if that's exactly good, but this character definitely has a lot of builds he can do to be relevant in every game, so I like this character right now. A tier, Chaos Knight. Chaos Knight is very similar to Wraith King. He's been buffed, it feels like, 10 times in a row, and now I think Chaos Knight's quite strong because they've increased his creep, I believe the creep damage multiplier on his E, yes. So Chaos Knight can begin jungling, I'm of the opinion, as soon as he gets like an extra point or 2 in his E, he could just go into the jungle. He pushes very fast because his E will just he'll just one-shot a range creep at level 1 if he gets like a crit on them. I mean, he's really good in lane. He's like the most immovable character in lane phase in Dota, next to like Wraith King. You just cannot kill this character, make him recall. He just heals up so easily, and he doesn't do insane damage is his problem until he gets a couple of items. But Chaos Knight kind of has a slow style of victory where you get your armlet, you get like treads, you farm everything, you never recall, you show up to fights with armlet, which armlet essentially the way it's balanced is it's a very powerful item if you can use it. So characters who buy armlet are going to be really strong at that power spike. So you show up with like armlet, Echo Saber, you W someone and you just one-shot them. Then late game you can build things like Manta Style and Harder Tarrasque to just be like an unkillable monster. Your W also pierces spell immunity, so you can slay the enemy carry really easily because your W is going to be reducing armor and bringing them to you. This character just takes over games, and in general, even though he's a strength character, he scales really damn well. I think just because he utilizes illusions instead of summons. This guy scales like a beast, in my opinion. So I think Chaos Knight's absurd. I'd say he's almost S tier, in my opinion. The only reason I don't put him S tier is he's not going to take a stat camp necessarily very quickly because he doesn't go Battle Fury. And his damage is kind of slow to ramp up. It takes like a minute. So enemies can sometimes get away from you, but this guy's strong. Gyro is basically only a little bit weaker than he was last pass. They nerfed his base attack time on his flag cannon to, I think it was 1.2, and they nerfed it to 1.3. seconds, which is actually quite a big nerf in terms of damage. But Gyro is still very solid. He has the stun, he has the high magic damage, his ultimate lets him power farm and defend himself if you like try to dive him, because he's just going to do a big slow and do a bunch of magic damage. And late game he turns on Flat Cannon, he turns on like Satanic, and it's really hard to kill him. So he's just basically Gyro last patch, just a little bit weaker. This character's still nuts. He's like one of the best power farmers in the game. Like, and he doesn't even need like a Battle Fury. You get like a Crystallis, like or a Scepter, and you power farm at a speed that's unprecedented. It feels like every game Gyro's in, he's gonna be like top net worth, top levels, top items, and it just takes an active god to kill him or something like a Doom, where you can, prevent him from healing outright. This character's really powerful. Faceless Void is generally quite good right now, in my estimation. You kind of do ramp up slowly, but it's not a big deal. You get either the Battle Fury or you can get like Midas Maelstrom. You just focus on power farming, and then Faceless Void can, once he hits level 6, if you're coordinated with your team, you can make a lot of plays happen with the Chronosphere, and that's very valuable, especially because, of course, Chronosphere pierces BKB. It's very difficult to deal with. So Faceless Void kind of, ramps up slowly, can make plays for his team, and then late game, the enemy basically either has to have some way to cut down healing or they have to have a break, because once you get the backtrack talent, this character is like immortal. So he's just kind of like a total package. He's really good in general. The only weakness he has is that he just takes a while to scale up, but he's quite strong. Slark is like the best position one when it comes to just running enemies down across the map. He runs around, dewards, he jumps on enemies. You cannot dispel his W, even though it doesn't pierce spell immunity, but basically if you get the jump on them, that doesn't really matter. He gets a bunch of, essence shift stacks, and, before you know it, the game's over, because there's a Slark with, like, 10 kills. So, yeah, this guy's really powerful at the moment. Quite good, just in general. The only weakness is not a great lane phase, and if he doesn't get kills, he's not the best. And he's also not super high in damage. Like, he's not one of these, like, dataless builders who's going to one-tap someone. So he has a couple of little weaknesses, but he's overall a very good character right now. Terrorblade is another just generally solid character who scales really hard. He has somewhat of a weak lane phase after like level 1. Level 1 you get like Metamorphosis and typically just push people off of you. After that, it's kind of difficult, His reflection ability is kind of junk. I mean, it doesn't really feel like it does anything to me. So he's kind of not too great in lane phase. But level 6 onwards, you're like pretty powerful, because if enemies go under you before they have BKB, you just ult them. Once you get low, that oftentimes lets you win the fight, because it's such a strong ability. And you farm exceptionally fast, because you can keep your Conjure Image clones up for a while. So you farm fast, you get your Manta style. The main problem Terrorblade has is that, he has a basic ability with an ultimate cooldown. So you can't just waste the Metamorphosis, because it is so important. But I think if you're good at Terrorblade, that's not a big problem. And then he has these little tools late game to let him still be strong, even when he's like fully slotted. Of course, his Demon Seal, and then the Terror Wave, which gives him Metamorphosis for like 10 seconds, I think, yeah. So even late game, and I think this actually, it can't be cast when you're Metamorphosis, but this gives you kind of a secondary little round of DBS, because you get a bajillion attack speed and movement speed. So this guy's generally quite strong, in my estimation. Templar Assassin has one of these carries that kind of wants to speed up the game. She wins most matchups basically with Refraction. She doesn't really ever have to back, because she can just use that to tank the monsters. And she hits a timing very early in the game with like Treads, Blink Dagger, and like Desolator, where you blink onto someone, you hit Meld, you hit them with Refraction auto attacks, they die in like 3 hits. It feels like, not literally, but it feels like that. So this character is all about power farming and also taking the ante up on the game and playing fast, using the ultimate, because that's like her weakness is you're basically down on ultimate on this character in team fights. So you need to have the advantage. You need to use the ultimate to find picks on people. So this is definitely a skill-expressive character that I think, if she's in her current state, high-level players are always going to use this character effectively. Uh, you know, I think if you're good at TA, then this is a good time to play TA at the moment. So yeah, I think you're very happy right now. You just have to make sure to not let it go super late game, because, you know, then you're kind of get outscaled, because your damage, I mean, you do have the refraction instances talent, but that's really all your damage. So, you know, you gotta kind of play at a fast pace on this character. Bloodseeker's similar to TA, similar to Slark, and this is a character that wants to run around and really get the action going. He's quite good at doing that. He pushes fast, he heals fast, he runs on the map at high speed, he provides true sight of his enemies. Uh, you know, Rupture is one of the hardest things to counter in the game. You just rupture somebody and put your silence down to prevent them from being able to teleport away. He's very good at ganking, you know. He has good Scepter and good Shard. His Shard gives him percentage health pure damage on his Q. His Scepter gives him an AoE magic damage and also a big shield. So Bloodseeker is not really known for being like the best late game +1, but he scales decently actually with those items. So this is a good character for playing very aggressively and trying to get things done on the map. I think he's maybe even a little bit better suited mid, if I'm being honest, because he does kind of have that fast, you know, run people down playstyle. But as a position 1, you're also quite happy. And he farms very quickly with Maelstrom as well. So this is a good hero to play at the moment, in my opinion. And the best two characters, these two should go without saying. You've got your Phantom Assassin. Phantom Assassin, I don't really need to even introduce this character at the moment. She farms fast with Battle Fury. She doesn't even really lose lanes that hard. You know, get your Battle Fury, you get Blur. You run around and farm without being visible to the enemies. You quickly farm up a Battle Fury, a Deso, and like a BKB. You go in there, you do a bunch of damage. You know, it's pretty straightforward. Basically, the nerf they did this patch was mainly to her Scepter. So, and they nerfed her critical chance on her ultimate by 3%. But, you know, the Scepter is, I think, a build path you can go, because it gives you kind of some utility, but it's not even, like, required. I don't even think it's what makes Phantom Assassin powerful. Like, what makes Phantom Assassin powerful is her passive combined with her daggers that she throws at you. This character goes into stealth, she buys a Divine Rapier, and she just throws daggers at people until they die. And the past patch didn't really hurt anything about that. This character also has insane flexibility because she has a break that she can buy with Shard. So that right there gives her an advantage against, you know, a lot of characters, like, you know, your Tide Hunters of the world, or even like your Bristlebacks, who are dependent on a passive ability to kind of be tanky and strong. This character can counter them quite easily. So this character is just bonkers at the moment still, after their nerfs. Definitely the strongest position 1 right now. The second, though, is Bristleback, in my estimation. Bristleback does have a little bit of a weak lane phase, but you get, in my opinion, you get something along the lines of Vanguard, Soul Ring, Mana Boots, and then you farm quite quickly, and you get your Scepter, and Bristleback does still get countered by breaks, but now with your Scepter, which you get an active effect and you shoot out the quills, Bristleback can now fly into the team fights and do quite a bit of damage with the active portion of his E. And he scales quite well because, you know, none of his stuff is countered by spell immunity. And he even pushes towers decently with Warpath. So, you know, this character, in the past they could just ignore you and kill your team, but now with the Scepter, that's not really a great option. Like, they're going to have to deal with you. So, this is a very powerful character right now. Just, you know, he's a little bit weak to breaks, of course, so he's not quite as good as Phantom Assassin, but this guy's very strong. I definitely recommend playing him right now. So, thank you for watching. That's my tier list. The only one I guess I did forget to say, I think I forgot to talk about these two. I'll do that real quick. Tiny at the moment is not particularly good. He has high amount of cost. He's not very good early. He doesn't really even farm that great until he gets Shard, so he's just lackluster, in my opinion. There's just better characters to play. He's okay mid lane, but there's just better characters to play +1. Same with Drop Ranger that I said with Sniper. This character just gets jumped on and killed. She's just not very good, in my opinion, unfortunately. I don't really have too much else to say about her. Yeah, you just get ran at. I mean, you know, you have the little tiny slow and the gust, but I think that the volley pierces spell immunity, but not this. So you have no way to really protect yourself on this character. and you don't even do great damage. So, yeah, that's why I maintain those are there. So, let me know what you thought in the comments if you enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe for more content. I'll be doing other position tier lists soon. So, thank you and have a good day. Bye-bye.